Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the P1 podcast with Matt and Tommy. It is post-Miami Grand Prix edition. We are here to reflect on what happened on the racetrack and also what happened off the racetrack, because it's Miami and it's an American F1 race. Tom Bellingham, welcome.
Hello.
Looking Supermax as ever with your T-shirt. You must be feeling great about your prospects for a third world title this year.
Not going to jinx anything, but yeah, the Red Bull is... People want that. A weird race. We'll get into it. It's just Formula One's just strange feeling at the moment. But yeah, Miami, a lot of people in our Twitch chat were like, oh, I really enjoyed that. And then other people thinking it's like the worst race they've ever seen. A strange one.
Yeah, there were memes being made that it was worse than Baku, which I don't think it was by any stretch. I think Baku was definitely the worst race of the year. Anyway, we'll get into that very shortly. We will now go into our 5-star review. If you want to leave us a 5-star review, please do, and we may well read it out in the next podcast episode. This one comes in from Drewish Princess from the USA. I absolutely love this podcast. I've been an F1 fan for only about 4 years, and I love how Matt and Tommy can explain complex rules and regulations simply so I understand it. It's made me love the sport more and want to soak up every ounce of the sport and its rich history. Thank you. Oh. Thank you to you, Drewish Princess. That is very, very kind of you. Yes, yeah, we will try and explain what on earth is going on in Formula One right now, to be honest with you. Let's start, shall we? Let's begin this podcast with Matt's most memorable moment. And mine wasn't an overtake. It kind of involved an overtake. It was Alonso watching the race. Not him getting a podium, although that was quite memorable, but it seems to be very normal now that Alonso gets podiums, which is very weird to say out loud,
isn't it?
If you told us that at the end of last year where we were questioning his move from Alpine to Aston, and he's now here with 75 points, he's doing quite well and can still slightly be considered as a championship contender, perhaps, if they turn on that wind tunnel for a bit longer. But yes, Alonso watching the race. How does this man keep on giving? The fact that he, in third place, like you would expect that maybe from a Logie Bear who's running in 20th, maybe watching the screen, seeing what's going on. This guy's running in third, and he saw Lance Stroll's overtake. And he went to compliment him. Of course he did. It's Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll. There's a compliment coming. And then unfortunately the team then came back to him and told him it was for 13th place. So probably slightly shocking for Fernando.
More kind of, thinking that Alonso's got some kind of bonus every time he does something nice about Lance Stroll.
Or maybe he's just a nice guy these days.
It's just the new era. He's finally got a decent car. And having good luck. Not even Matt's biggest flop power can stop him. Unbelievable
There was
scenes.
an amazing meme, which we included in Funniest Tweets, where, I mean, you'll have to see it to kind of understand it, but it was the Grim Reaper meme with the doors, and all of them were open and whatever, and then they get to Fernando Alonso, and Chad Alonso opens the door and says, "No, not today." And look, I had to test my powers. I had to see how far I could go with my biggest flop, and I'm glad he didn't, because I didn't want anything bad. I didn't want him to have a bad result, and I thought his run of luck might be over this week, but it isn't, and he's still performing incredibly well.
It's mad, isn't it? He's scored 15 points in every single race, because even the race there, he didn't end up finishing P3. It was a sprint weekend, and he bagged enough points to take 15 points in that race as well. So Fernando Alonso, just unbelievable scenes at the moment. Incredible. Imagine that start to the year. I mean, 2 predictions I'll talk about. One is my prediction at the start of the year, where I said Alonso finished 7th. This was before we had any testing or anything. 7th in the championship. Everyone in Twitch chat laughing at me, thinking that's the most ridiculous prediction. And I'm probably going to be wrong by about 4 places.
but the wrong
and
way.
it's the other way, which is absolutely insane. I mean, imagine if I'd said, "Oh, Alonso's going to finish third," everyone would have been like, "What are you smoking?"
Would have been seen as the oracle if you had said that and it had come true. So,
and then the other prediction is you said Alonso would be the biggest meme on the grid, and you've kind of got it, even though you kind of thought that it would just be because Aston might be terrible or there'd be drama or that kind of stuff. There's no doubt he's the biggest meme on the grid, like you say, in your memorable moment. He just delivers every weekend. He's the main character, even his little podium celebration thing. He just makes you laugh, doesn't he?
He's so good. And he is in that sort of part of his career now where he's been around the block. He's done Formula One now. Give him a championship winning car. We might well see the Fernando Alonso from the past who is absolutely ruthless and will stay in his pit box until 1 minute 30 to go in qualifying and then stop Lance Stroll from getting a lap. But I think, he is an amazing character and one with which I think he is universally loved now, which is insane to think because he wasn't previously. At Ferjose Aragon came in with a question regarding Aston Martin. If Lawrence Stroll didn't own Aston Martin, would Lance Stroll be at risk of losing his seat? I think if Lawrence Stroll didn't own Aston Martin or previous iterations of the team in terms of having a major stake, Lance wouldn't be, I don't think, in right now, to be honest with you. No. He has had great moments. He's had podiums. He has done decent sort of standout things, pole in Turkey. But apart from these moments, he's not really turned up this year. Of course, he's had his injuries and whatnot, so we had to give him fair sort of room to recover. But this weekend was pretty shocking. The fact that he qualified 18th when his teammate was on the front row of the grid, and then did he score any points? I don't think he did. No,
he didn't.
So no points scored as well.
12th.
Yes, finishing 12th is just not good enough. I thought that he would have at least come through the field. Lance tends to be more of a racer than a qualifier. So I am quite surprised considering overtaking was sort of possible today, which was surprising. But yeah, Lance, no points. And yes, I think he would probably be at risk of losing his seat.
Yeah, I do agree with you that it's not to say that he doesn't deserve to be a Formula One driver. But yeah, for me, his ability level is one of those kind of midfield, deserves 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 years in the sport, and then maybe goes on to do something else. But as we know, he's going to be in that seat for a very long time. But I think now he should be doing a lot better when you see where Fernando Alonso's put in the car. And, we all know what I think about Fernando Alonso and how good he is, and even now. But let's not forget, even though he maybe had more fortune last year, someone like Esteban Ocon, on his day, could quite, he could beat Fernando Alonso. He would out-qualify him every now and then, beat him in the races and things like that. And Lance isn't doing that. And while I do think Alonso is absolutely incredible, and, I think he can be beaten by certain people. So I think Lance Stroll has to aim at least getting ahead of Alonso in some race at all. But this weekend, absolutely awful from him. One to forget.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think Fernando Alonso is in his prime by any stretch of the imagination. Like, he can't be. Biologically 41 years old, he is going to be slightly slower on his wits and everything else. And Lance, as in his stage, the stage of his career that he's in right now, he should be in his doing prime, what Ocon did. Like, he should be at the very least matching him sometimes. And, that this kind of contradicts what I predicted at the start of the season, which was Alonso out-qualifying Stroll 23-0. But that shouldn't happen. That prediction should not happen. But right now we are on course with 5-0 for it to happen. I think Lance will turn up at one point, maybe when it rains. But yeah, it's a difficult situation, but then also it's not, because he can stay there for as long as he wants. Tommy, what is your most memorable moment?
Yeah, my most memorable moment, as you said.
No.
My memorable moment
we are filming this podcast, by the way, after midnight, so yes. This could go off the rails.
Yeah, a bit delusional. Max Verstappen winning from P9 fairly easily. Oh, Matt's so triggered.
Max, you're so good.
But yeah, I don't think it's a weird one because it was very similar to Spa last year, really, where he just, I don't remember a driver, maybe other than like a Michael Schumacher, where you have you start near the back and you just have that inevitability that you're going to win. And it's almost so unspectacular. That's not like discrediting him, he's got to drive the car and do well, but it doesn't look spectacular. He just kind of does it. And it's like, oh, he's won. He's won fairly easily from ninth. And normally, P9 to P1, oh my God, that's unbelievable. And it is a really, really good drive, but it just looks so effortless. And not only that, I think as well, last race, obviously Perez was absolutely brilliant. But I think that's pretty damning for Perez to have been P1 with Max all the way down in P9 and, looked like Verstappen won it fairly comfortably, really.
Certainly did. I'm not surprised that's your most memorable moment because on paper that's pretty awesome. That is quite interesting because I feel the same way in that it was an amazing drive. Ninth to first, beating your teammate who has been on form.
And on pole when you're ninth.
And on pole, yeah. I think the fact that his overtakes were so easy, it's similar to how Hamilton's come through the field previously when his Merc has been the fastest car, where drivers don't offer any kind of defence just purely because there's no point. There's no point because it just affects their race. If they try and defend from someone that they know is going to beat them anyway, either in the pit stops or whatever, it's just going to affect their race. It's going to slow them down, then potentially get them under fire from drivers behind. So it is frustrating to see that because you want to see them defend, but you also completely understand that they shouldn't if they're trying to make the most of their race. Question from Calvin 12 Fern. Did Red Bull deliberately put Checo on the wrong strategy? How is it that they didn't put Max on the medium to start and cut through the field earlier? This is an interesting question. I would argue that they didn't put Checo on the wrong strategy in the slightest, because if Checo starts on the hards, for example, and then you've got Alonso on the mediums, you've got Sainz on the mediums behind, and they jump him into turn one, all of a sudden, that decision of putting Checo on the hards, you're probably going to send that exact same question in, Calvin.
The same tweet going, why have they put him on the hards at the start?
Why would you put Checo on the hards? So, they was obviously going to get jumped into turn one. So no, I think Checo being on the mediums, being able to stretch his legs, even though I don't feel like he really did in that first stint. Alonso was only a few seconds behind come the pit stops. I know he did kind of put the pedal to the metal at some point towards the end of that stint, but he wasn't 15 seconds down the road like we sort of expected. So no, I don't think Red Bull at all deliberately put Checo on the wrong strategy. I think it also made sense for Max to be on the hards, because I said this in our Twitch watch along, Tommy, where it was the right idea for Max to go on the hards, because if he was struggling to make it through the pack, eventually the medium tyre runners around him would stop. And therefore the Red Bull pace advantage that they've got, even Max on old hard tyres can go quicker than other drivers around him that have just stopped on fresher hard tyres. So even though Max made it through very easily and started to pull away from Checo with his old hard tyres, it made sense for him to start on hards for that reason.
You always do that strategy as well. Like, it's not everyone, like Hamilton did it and he was out of position. You're going to start on the hard tyres when you're further down because, like you say, you other people are going to pit in front of you if you can't get past, and then you've got the clean air to do it. That's always happened in Formula One, and today it just so happened that that strategy did actually work really well, and strangely, the people that did start on the hards actually had quite a big advantage because they could go on mediums at the end, light fuel, and they were so much quicker, the mediums at the end. It was crazy. But it wasn't a case of, they're not sabotaging Checo and putting him on a deliberately wrong strategy. Of course, it was going to be the right strategy for him to go with, and Max was always going to do it. I think you even predicted it yesterday, Matt, that Max will go on hard tyres, stay out as long as possible, undercut everyone, overcut everyone, and be absolutely fine. Obviously, we predicted that it'd probably be P2, but actually, he had so much more pace in hand over Perez that ended up winning the race quite easily.
It was surprising, wasn't it, to see that pace differential between himself and Perez after what we saw in Saudi, what we saw in Baku, where it wasn't anywhere near as big as that. We do wonder whether Checo just wasn't told that there were walls and therefore could kind of count as a street track.
It is kind of a street circuit. Come on, Checo.
Is it technically a street? I don't think it is as an actual. I don't know what actually classifies it. Do you have to have like a traffic light or something nearby, or I don't know. But yes, there you go. That's that question done. Conman81 comes in with a question as well. What made this race feel not as good as it was? It had overtakes, strategies, a lot of action, but still felt meh. Is it really just that Red Bull are so far out in front, the rest seems pointless to care about? It's an interesting one, isn't it, Tommy? I'll let you take this one first. Go on. You give me your juicy opinion.
Yeah, this is a really interesting question and one I completely agree with. In our Twitch chat, like I kind of said at the start, some people going, oh, that was a really good race. There was a lot of action. I dare say that after all our complaining about the DRS zone, I know Max breezed past everyone, but that's just the nature of the Red Bull. The DRS zone was actually really good. Like we saw people actually braking in the braking zone, and actually it wasn't just motorway passes like we'd normally get with DRS. So I think they did a really good job there. And yeah, it's, I don't know, it's a weird one. Maybe it's just something about Miami just isn't as exciting. I think the TV direction was woeful a lot of the time and made it quite hard to follow. Even when there was quite a lot of exciting overtakes. And yeah, it's a weird one because on paper, I think that was quite a good race, but I just think there was something about it. Kind of like last year, we had quite a few overtakes and it just kind of maybe just underwhelmed a little bit. Maybe as well that there was so much hype because of the grid order. And Alonso didn't get past Perez at the start. Max got through, but maybe not in a particularly exciting way. Yeah, it's a weird one.
Yeah, it was. It's hard to put your finger on exactly what it is. Some people are saying, oh, it's because Charles did really bad that you hated the Miami Grand Prix. It was actually really good. I mean, part
Kermit
of it,
the Frog said that.
No. I don't know why I put Kermit. I could hear it coming out, and I was like, I wasn't trying to do Kermit, but here we are. I'm not a massive fan of the circuit itself. I think that the overtakes, I don't know, it's weird because when you look at the highlights, for example, you go, oh, there was quite a lot of overtaking in the midfield and whatever. I think partly 2021 has warped our brains into what should be a Formula One season, 100%. Our expectations have still been put up by that, I think. And even 2022, for the first half of the season, we had a fight for the win. And that will always be the most glorious thing, is a fight for the World Championship, fight for victories every single time. I'm still struggling to process why I didn't enjoy it as much as I did for Miami. I think that there is a slight feeling of disappointment of, this season's wrapped up. No one else is going to be able to challenge them. Perez wasn't able to really do anything this Grand Prix. I think it was the fact that Verstappen, if we're looking at just the battle for the lead, we all knew he was going to win. There wasn't that, Perez could put up a fight, anything like that. Like the other few races perhaps might have turned into Baku, etc., if they had got together. But Verstappen was so far clear that maybe that's one of the reasons why, when we look at the challenge, the battle for the win, that it was meh. But yeah, it's weird comment. I genuinely don't know how to describe it. It's just no. Maybe it's just because we're such hardcore old school F1 fans that love the tracks of Spa and Monza and all these ones that they just feel different in some ways. Maybe it was the driver intros. Maybe that threw us off so much in the first 10 minutes before they started that we just didn't know how to process the rest of the race.
Yeah, on that, what did you think? I'm maybe controversial, but I think people should stop getting so pressed about like America just having a bit of cheese and making stuff a bit fun and silly. Like I know it's a bit cringy, but it's lighthearted, it's funny,
coming. And we know it's coming as well.
Yeah,
but I feel like you just have to. I said this in funniest tweets. I was like, I enjoyed it, but kind of for the wrong reasons, where I didn't go, well, this is a great production. It's more, the F1 drivers feel a little bit awkward and it's quite funny to see how they kind of cope with the situation.
Yeah.
You're not going to see that anywhere else. So it doesn't affect any of us, apart from perhaps ruins the entire spectacle of the Grand Prix, if anything, if what I just said is anything to go by. But no, and the drivers getting in the cars afterwards, like, it's just little things that America want to put their stamp on the sport, and I don't mind it that much. People will moan, maybe will moan at points when they do it for Vegas and stuff, but it's not that deep, is it?
No,
really?
I think that's the thing. Like, it's not that deep. It's just a bit of fun. Before the race, some great memes will come out of it, and then we get into the race. Like, cool. Let even if it's cheesy and a bit silly, let places put their own stamp on the race.
Next question from Shane57F1. This Miami GP had a lot more overtakes than last year, which I'm sure we all wanted. Do you think Max's dominating performance took away from the overall race? Also, with Red Bull being so strong, do you think fans will lose interest in the season? I think we covered the first part quite a bit there, but the second part, it's going to be a really, and I think I've said this before on the podcast, it's going to be a really interesting phase now for Formula One, where we've hit this big spike. Does it just disappear and we go back to before Drive to Survive, where we don't have all of these crazy championship fights and whatever, and it actually is somewhat dull at times? Formula One is. That's what makes the special moments special, is the fact that we do get 0-0 draws in racing and so on. So it's not every weekend that we get to see Hamilton and Verstappen come together and there's all this kind of controversy and drama and chatter, etc. So yeah, I'd like to think not, but we're just going to have to wait and see. It's going to be a few more years, I think, until we really start to see perhaps the loss of interest, in my opinion. But
yeah, the thing is as well, like, this is what a lot of people forget, is that everyone says Drive to Survive are, we've had really good seasons. We haven't. Drive to Survive started in the Mercedes dominant era, and it was only 2021 where the season went down to the finale and it was really dramatic. So Drive to Survive and the nature of Formula One and it being popular with Drive to Survive did actually happen during the Mercedes dominant era. And I think the main thing is here, it is just all down to 2021 and the start of 2022, like you said, that we had 2021, it was so good, and then we were promised new regs where it's going to be even better, and then we started the season and it kind of was. You had not only a similar, it felt like the first few races you had that Hamilton versus Verstappen, but it was now Leclerc versus Verstappen. But yet the racing, actually, they could follow better. It was exciting. The battling was good. They were passing and repassing each other. And then now we've kind of gone back to one team completely dominating the regs. And we are just, I think it's taking a lot of, I think it's just a shock for people that we had that. And we've seen what we can have, because a lot of people would have started watching Formula One and Mercedes were what Red Bull are now. And that's just the way Formula One was, and just deal with it. So then we were kind of used to looking at a battle for seventh and it being more exciting. But because we've had that taste of 2021, now it just does seem a little bit not the same. Like when Mercedes were, I'm not saying I want this to happen, and a lot of people will go, oh, well, it's just because you're wearing a Max Verstappen shirt and you really like Verstappen. But I think the sad reality is, and I don't want this to be the case, but we just kind of have to get over the fact that Red Bull are in that position that Mercedes are, and they will win every race as if there's not a problem. Like that is just the reality. Like, it's true, but it is true. Like, that's what Mercedes was like for years, like particularly 2014 to 2016. We're back in that, where look at the racing we've had. Verstappen could start last and would have been second in that race at least. So yeah, it's not great because we've had that taste, but I think this question is bang on that Max dominating and just the way Formula One is now, because we've had that taste of how exciting it can be. We're not used to it again, and we kind of need to almost reset ourselves. Not that I want to, because we're very much like, no, we had really good racing. Why is it back to this? But the sad reality is we are back into that now, and we've just got that new era where someone just gets the rules right, and it's going to take maybe a year. Hopefully it's just a year for someone to catch up. Come on, Aston Martin. Lawrence Stroll.
Before you get disqualified, come on, Aston Martin. Let's go for going
Pop
over
another
budget cap.
$3 billion in.
Literally. But no, it's true. You get a taste of the forbidden fruit and then you want a bit more. And unfortunately, the forbidden fruit's gone. And the only thing that's left is Red Bull winning everything. So, yeah, very interesting. Love that little that take from you, Tommy. Tommy Insights. Not Tommy Tantrum, just Tommy. Tommy, what could be another word that's like an analytical, but a T? Have a think of that whilst I read the next question.
Tommy's
It's
thoughts.
Lucia... Yeah, that was actually quite easy to come up with, wasn't it? It's Lucia Damas. What were your... Oh, God, I've just read what it is. What were your thoughts on Leclerc being passed multiple times by a Haas? For me, it was so painful to watch. Same, Lucia. Thanks for sending in this question. I think this was one of the worst weekends for a very long time for Charles Leclerc, in my opinion. Not only was he making mistakes in free practice, i.e. crashing, but crashing in qualifying, and then having no pace in the race as well. I would say even his racecraft was not 100% with how he tried to manage and get past Magnussen. So definitely a race to forget for Charles. Yes, it was absolutely horrendous to watch him not only battle the Haas, but before that, not catch the Haas. I was watching the intervals. I was like, it's 4 seconds. Yeah. What's going on here? Where's the pace? Like Carlos Sainz did a great job, I would say, to kind of fly the flag for Ferrari in some regard, although I would argue slightly bottled it with his 5-second penalty going into the pit lane and whatnot. But it's just toing and froing. Like Baku, Charles Leclerc was the second fastest car out there and did an amazing job. We then go to Miami, and Ferrari looked like the 4th fastest car in race trim. And can you just imagine if Red Bull didn't exist? This would be the greatest championship fight of all time. But unfortunately, we Red Bull are here and they're dominating. But yeah, Ferrari just toing and throwing.
It would be the greatest. We'd all be like, "Oh God, this Alonso dominance is well boring, isn't it?"
It's so true. Yeah,
it's too good. We need to peg Fernando back. It's too good.
You would never say that, though. That's
absolutely
the thing. You would be going,
no,
I think we should have 23 race wins for Alonso in a row. Yes, I think it's good for the sport. He deserves it.
We've waited too long for
it's
an
fine.
Alonso
He'll be watching people on the screen do overtakes whilst he wins everything.
Yeah. Yeah, painful for Ferrari. Definitely a weekend to forget for both of them, because it looked so promising for Sainz. I can't believe Sainz made that mistake when he was looking like the weekend where he was on top of Leclerc, and he still was. Too many innuendos at this time of night to...
I reckon if this is filmed at 2 p.m, I'll be like...
You wouldn't even think think about it.
Half past midnight, I'm like, Tommy?
It's because we've had all these innuendos and all the chat going, sus. But yeah.
Also,
Leclerc.
as well, I'm just noticing Sainz finished 9 seconds behind Russell in the end. Of course, that was with probably the 5-second penalty added on as well. But it wasn't even like he was troubling Alonso and Russell. He just got breezed past, didn't he, when he was running in P3?
And Leclerc only finished, I say only, but like Leclerc finished 10 seconds behind him, where that race felt like Sainz was like 40 seconds ahead of Leclerc. Really weird.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Weird race.
Yeah, let's forget about Ferrari now. Let's not talk about it ever again until we go to the next race. At Tyler Ballard 458, will Nick de Vries still be in a race seat before the summer break? It's a really... I mean, I came into the weekend obviously making some predictions, which we'll get onto a little bit later in the podcast. But I genuinely thought this weekend would be let's just rein it in. Let's not do anything stupid. And let's just have a clean weekend. Even if you're 4 laps down and finishing 20th, at least, I mean, to be fair, he did finish the race. Let's say that. However, Lap 1, turn 1, the man is crashing into the back of Norris. Not massively, but still making contact with the back of Norris. Bit of front wing damage it looked like as well. I don't know what's going on with him at the moment. It just doesn't really make sense. And as for the question, I think he will still be in a race seat, but he is very much, I think, solidifying his future of not being in Formula One next year if this run of form carries on. I don't know whether they're actually going to bin him off for Lawson, but this is Red Bull. So if this continues in this triple header and he has crash after no points and miles off Tsunoda, I think it could come true.
I think they will. If it carries on like this to the point that he is making these mistakes, because again, like, he made the error, but Tsunoda's put in another great performance. Maybe we don't. It's a kind of weird one because we don't know how good the AlphaTauri actually is.
Another 11th for Tsunoda as well.
It's another 11th place, but you can't fault his consistency. He's putting that AlphaTauri, and it's hard to get points now because we've said it so many times. The top 8 are locked in pretty much, apart from Stroll this weekend because he had a stinker. And then, well, we didn't see anyone retire as well. In fact, can we just talk about that? There wasn't even a yellow flag apparently during the entire Grand Prix. And
Miami's going to have so many mistakes,
So
Tommy.
many mistakes. That was weird.
Yeah.
No one would have predicted that after the amount of mistakes we saw in qualifying.
Can you imagine the odds after qualifying for putting a bet on for no safety cars, no retirements, and no yellow flags?
That must be very rare in
millionaire. F1. I reckon that's never happened. We need to check this. I don't know how, but I don't think... I can't remember that never seeing a yellow flag in a race. No. You see it at some point, even if it's someone going wide. Like the amount of mistakes they all made in practice as well. Going off, Albon went off 1 million times at that hairpin at the end of the lap. And for no one to have done that is crazy.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm just trying to see if anyone's actually tweeted about it and got a stat. Because I do remember there was one race where there was no yellow flags, but... yeah, what a weird...
Do you, in your encyclopedic brain, you just recall like sitting there in 1982 and I remember back in my day.
I just can't believe that. Yeah, that of all the tracks as well, we were promised, it was going to be it's going to be crazy. But yeah, no safety car, no virtual safety car, no yellow flags, no retirements. That's wild. Absolutely wild.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Okay, we now move to our biggest winner. Go on, Tommy, you go first.
Biggest winner. I will go for...
You can tell you've definitely prepared this part of the podcast.
I'm actually gonna say Kevin Magnussen, even though P10 is not wild, but he qualified really well. Probably the best he could have hoped for race-wise. I think his battling was really good. I think he was completely clear of Hülkenberg all weekend, which I think is impressive because I thought it would be the other way around, personally. But it seems like those two, Magnussen and Hülkenberg, one will be really good and the other will be terrible, and they will switch. So yeah, I'll go for K-Mag.
Okay, I am not. I would in a normal scenario go for Max Verstappen, but I'm not going to because it's a bit more interesting if we go for someone else, even though he did an incredible job. I'm going to go with George Russell. I think that P4 in that Mercedes that looked pretty woeful is a great result. Once again, not only that, but to beat Hamilton again, like. It's so, I just feel like it's not spoken about enough how well George is doing up against Lewis.
Yeah.
Even when Lewis says, I don't have the feeling with the car, etc. Sometimes George does, and he beats him, and no one talks about this enough, I don't think. So George is doing an amazing job. Another great points finish for him. And yeah, he was 7 seconds off Alonso. I think that he gets my biggest winner.
Fair play.
We now go to biggest loser. I'm going to go for McLaren. We both go for McLaren. Yes, ouch. Norris in 17th, Piastri in 19th. I just want to say straight down the barrel of the camera to all McLaren fans, I am so sorry. I feel you. Like, I think it's bad enough what I'm going through. But you lot, you got something else going on. It's really just processing how bad of a Grand Prix that was. Norris was 1.2 seconds ahead of De Vries at the end. Piastri was lapped. The only other driver was Sargent that was lapped. Big questions.
Legitimately the worst car, I think, in that race, because Albon showed where the Williams could
Collectively,
be.
Yeah. Collectively, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely awful. Just the last race as well, Norris did pretty well, and it's like, oh, McLaren are back. And then, just kidding, we're terrible again.
It's a mystery as to what's going on there. And you were roasting them before when they weren't having these kind of results. So I can only imagine where Tommy's tantrum's coming up in the next few races if this continues. But we want to see McLaren do well. I love them as a team, and I love the drivers.
The drivers are too good to be 17th and 19th as well.
Good. They are so good. So it is painful, and one with which I'm sure, maybe not Oscar, because he's just started F1, but I think Lando is going to certainly start looking around the room and seeing who's got their hand up to go and be spoken to. Okay, let's now reflect on our predictions, shall we? Okay. Tommy, you've had a great set of predictions here. Biggest good surprise? I went for Valtteri Bottas. Now, this was looking so good. Q3 for Valtteri out of nowhere. This man was looking incredible, and I feel like half a point is deserved for that. Like, that's a banger. Like, that is a stone cold Saturday bet. No? Okay. Then Sunday, race day, finished 13th, and he was running in the points, and I was like, go on the Bottas. But no, I think it was a valiant effort from me, but 0 points. Tommy, how was yours?
Mine was absolutely awful. I've gone for Oscar Piastri, who started on the back row, finished second to last. Terrible. Just awful. Mate.
Oh my God.
It gets worse as well as we go in.
It gets horrendous. Mate, your 3 predictions this week are the worst things I've ever seen. Right, next up, biggest flop. I went for Fernando Alonso, and the man looked at me and said, not today. So good, I'm glad, because I just wanted to test my powers. I'm not ready for these kind of ones. We'll be going back to a backmarker team for next time. Tommy, what was your biggest flop?
My biggest flop was the guy who finished best of the rest. Pierre Gasly had a brilliant race. He took that personally. Maybe my biggest flop prediction is like the opposite to what yours were at the start, where suddenly they go, like Logie Sarge in that first weekend, where he's like, no, Tommy, you know what? Watch this.
Screw you. Watch this. I love it. Maybe your biggest flop is watch this, and mine are I can take on certain powered drivers, but not the goats.
Still gets worse, by the way.
I was going to say, finally, there's a few more. Next one's pole position. I went for Max Verstappen. That went well. That would have happened, but someone crashed. And who was your pole position prediction, Tommy?
Mine was the guy who did crash and made a mistake and crashed in free practice. It was Charles Leclerc.
That is the worst set of predictions I've ever seen.
We've had a nightmare.
However, my top 3, let's go. I went for Verstappen, Perez, Russell. That's 2 points right in the locker. Thank you very much. Give me that. What about yours, Tommy?
I went for Perez, Verstappen, Sainz, which was terrible. But
you were feeling quite good going into the race about that.
I think looking into the race, I think people would have probably gone for mine. I think we both predicted Perez to win, but didn't happen.
And then we go to our one crazy prediction, where mine was in the bin 10 minutes into FP1. Nick De Vries won't crash. Are you kidding me, Nick? Like, just give me a break.
Also, just I love how at turn 1 as well, he just thought, just in case Matt tries to argue half a point here.
That's so true, because I started arguing about whether Friday was technically in the weekend, and then he's like,
and then he's like,
turn one, lap one, just a little one, just a little boop. Thank you very much, Tommy.
Oh dear. I was trying to claim this on the entire race. Overtake missed by showing the crowd. Managed to not get this prediction despite the TV direction being pretty woeful again. Yeah, particularly so qualifying. Maybe it wasn't as bad in the race, but I felt like qualifying was particularly awful. The direction, they were missing people's hot laps. Graphics weren't coming up. I don't know if they had a stern word with whoever was doing it after qualifying to make sure the race was all right, but yeah. I don't think the race was too bad, to be honest with you. I don't have too many complaints for that. I think it was they caught most of the overtakes, as far as I'm aware. We weren't screaming at the timing tower going, "Hey, oh my God, this has happened! This has happened!" I love how there was one point where there was a cameraman in the crowd showing the aftermath of an overtake, and you were like, "Hey, oh my God, this is it!" But they were actually showing the cars with the Ferrari fan, wasn't it? It was quite a good shot, actually. Yeah. Well played. I don't think it was too bad in the race. Well, that is the end of that, isn't it, Tommy? A boring-ish race. And we've not managed to do a 4.5-hour podcast on it, which is impressive. We are, however, going to be making a podcast around how do we make Formula One better? What do we change? And we're going to get you to submit your ideas, and then we'll go through them. And that'll be probably this week, as in tomorrow when we turn to Monday, that week to really discuss where Formula One's going and listen to some of your thoughts. And hopefully we can collectively make Formula One better. I'm sure F1 are listening and taking we'll send it straight
notes
to the FIA.
We will. Yeah, absolutely.
Email it to Ross Brawn.
Yeah, I'm like, Ross, we've done some market research. You should have 5-stop mandatory. What do you think of that one? Tommy, your final thoughts, please, sir.
My final thoughts are, I know it's painful, but just think how sweet that thing is going to be when someone else wins, particularly when it's Fernando Alonso.
That's coming from a Max Verstappen fan. That's quite something.
It's weird because... Oh, gone.
No, it's fine. I was just going to wrap it up by saying my final thoughts, but you've got something else to say, big boy. Go
on. What I will say is just for any doubt that, even as someone that supports Max Verstappen, I don't want this to happen. Like, I supported Max Verstappen from the start because he's an exciting, some would say dangerous, like wheel-to-wheel racer. And that's what I like watching about him. I don't want to, of course I'm going to be happy if he ends up winning the championship again and stuff. But I don't know. I'm sure other people, you've supported drivers that have done well. And I want racing as much as the next person. I'm sure a lot of Red Bull fans would agree. It's not, you don't want to see him like breezing past everyone in the DRS. Even if it's your favourite team, we want some good racing. So, fingers crossed.
I completely agree with that. Ask me again if Charles Leclerc's dominating in a few years' time about how I feel about that. But no, I completely understand and believe you saying that because you can see that you want to have that close racing, even with your Max Cape in the background. It's quite sensational that's coming from you. And my final thoughts are. Oh my God, I am starving for a banging race. Please, Formula One, just muster something up in these next 3 races that are coming after this week break. We've got a week off, mad, but don't worry, lots of content coming your way on the Matt P1 Tommy channels. Don't you worry about that. But yes, and then we've got 3 racetracks which perhaps don't breed the most amount of...
Maybe.
Overtakes.
Our expectations will be so low. Look. Oh, Baku, that's an amazing, crazy, terrible. Miami, oh, look at the grid. Not great. Monaco, heard it here first. Absolute banger. Logie Sarge, P1.
Fair, if Fernando Alonso is pinning his hopes on getting ahead of them and then not letting them past. So Fernando Alonso pole around Monaco.
Yes, please, sign me up.
Oh my God, if that happens, that will be the greatest Monaco Grand Prix ever. Or maybe Spain enters the chat and says, hey, look at me, I've deleted the last chicane. I am now the best track on the calendar. Plenty of things to look forward to, maybe. We'll see you very soon for another podcast / Twitch stream / anything else that you absorb from us. Bye-bye.
Bye.